Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming onto this podcast and being part of something so amazing and being super vulnerable today and sharing your story.
No, you're welcome. I'm stoked to be able to share my story. I feel like I'm already going to cry. It's such an emotional thing and it really does bring so much back.
I know, yeah, it's a really tough thing to talk about. So could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and maybe what your life looked like before you started on your fertility journey?
Sure. I've been reflecting a lot on life pre-children lately because I'm lucky enough to now have a toddler. And nothing makes you reflect back more than having a toddler. Our life, I had only been with my husband for, at the time, my boyfriend, for about 8 months before we decided that we wanted to have a baby, which sounds really intense, but we were in our early to mid 30s. We were both living a pretty comfortable lifestyle. Luke is an electrician and he was working FIFO at the time. So he was back and we were spending loads of time together. And I was working full time as a paramedic. And so it was busy. It was also the start of COVID. So it was busy, but we did a lot of travel, went on a couple of overseas trips together in that time when we could, ate out a lot, drank a lot of wine, spent a lot of time with friends. It was pretty easy breezy, to be honest.
Yeah, amazing. And so you said you've got a toddler now.
Yes.
What does your life look like at the moment?
We have a little girl, Clementine. She'll be 3 in March. And then I've got a little boy asleep in the room. I can see he's just gone 7 months. So that's Clifford. So I've got Clem and Cliff. And we've now moved into a much bigger house because we were in a small house. I'm on maternity leave at the moment and will be for another few months. And Luke is no longer FIFO, so he's working close to home. And it's just absolute chaos in the best way.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Do you kind of remember the exact moment that either one of you or both of you realized together as a collective that the time was right and you wanted to have a child?
It was almost like the exact moment. We actually went to a friend's little one's first birthday. And we were like, we talked about it almost since the second we met. And like I said, it had been less than 12 months. And I was like, do you want to do it? And he was like, yep, let's have a baby. And I was like, let's do it. And funnily enough, we'd actually met and hooked up, just kissing, on a dance floor in 2019, I think. So a long time ago. So we kind of knew of each other. We'd dance around each other. So just the timing was right. We were like, let's have a family.
Yeah, I think when you meet people a little bit later in life as well, when you know, you're not mucking around, are you?
Yeah, no, I was like, our values align, our life is going to look the same in 10 years' time. Yeah, this is it.
Did you have any expectations around what trying for a baby would look like?
Yeah, you just get pregnant. Yeah, I was like every month, I was like, this is it. Yeah.
And how long were you guys trying for before you thought, okay, something might not be right here?
Being in the healthcare industry, I'm pretty logical and go to the doctor. I have no issues with any of that. I know a lot of people can be a bit anxious. So within probably 6-ish months, I went and got myself tested. My cycles were kind of irregular, but we were in the depth of COVID and I was working my ass off in Metro Melbourne and it was just so stressful. So I was like, it's got to be something to do with stress. So I went and got myself tested. They were concerned I wasn't ovulating based on there not being a progesterone peak at the end of my cycle. And so I was like, oh. So my GP was like, look, we could refer you to a fertility clinic, but it's in your best interest to get Luke tested as well so we know what we're working with. And that was the real curveball that neither of us saw coming. And that was that his sperm count put him in the infertile category.
So before you had that diagnosis, what were the emotions like when you were trying every single month and it just wasn't happening for you?
Yeah, it was really kind of sad and stressful, but we were also, it had only been such a short period of time, but it's amazing. We joke about how quickly we went from not trying to trying to looking at the, calendar and the dates and this is the time and you've got to be home at this time. And Luke was working FIFO and I would go to where he was working when I was meant to be ovulating, wherever that may be.
I think everyone can relate to that.
Yeah,
it's very romantic, isn't it?
Oh, there's about 2 months of fun and then the rest of it is chore.
Yeah, and it becomes 1 month seems like a lifetime as well during that period. So
absolutely,
not surprising at all.
No.
So once you had that diagnosis, what were the next steps for you guys?
We were referred to a fertility clinic. So it was basically the GP went through the numbers with Luke, his GP that he'd seen, and basically told him that he would not conceive with his sperm count. Yeah, so it quickly went from, oh, we'll just check what's up to you're not going to be able to have a baby. And we were concerned that his numbers would potentially put him in a category where we weren't even able to do IVF.
Did they give you a percentage of what your chances were with IVF at
No,
that time?
I don't think they really can. We did a lot of Googling, which really doesn't help. But it wasn't until we went to the fertility clinic that we really got any more information. And even then, they didn't like our chances. So we would have had to wait till they look at the sample to see what they could pick out. Obviously, they only need one sperm to fertilize an egg. So we were hopeful, but anxious.
And how was your relationship at that time?
For me, it was fine. And it's almost like this bizarre reverse, because I know in these cases, a lot of women feel a lot of guilt. And it's almost, this sounds awful, but a weight was lifted off my shoulders because I was then like, oh, it's not my fault. It's not me. But then obviously I had to deal with Luke, my now husband, feeling the responsibility of that. And then there's this innate sense of the manhood attached to the ability for a male to conceive. So that was a really difficult thing for him to get his head around. And it wasn't something that was spoken about. And he's now spoken about it with a lot of people, and it's really not that uncommon. But it was initially a huge blow. And it was difficult to navigate for sure.
So you've got the diagnosis, you've gone to your fertility specialist, and then what is the advice from here? Is there any further testing that you need to have done, or is it kind of you can move into IVF now? Is there any steps before IVF that you needed to take?
No, it was really bizarre because I'd had one very good friend go through IVF, and she did all the ovulation induction and she did tubal flushing and blah, blah, blah. But because it was male factor infertility, they just said ICSI.
Yeah, okay.
So we didn't, I know a lot of people, to get the funding for IVF, they have to go through the ovulation induction. For us, because we met that infertile category, it was straight to ICSI.
Yeah.
It was just shocking, bizarre. I didn't expect that. I really didn't know much about IVF at the time. And then it was like, you're going to do the most intense version of it.
Yeah. And did that feel overwhelming for you as well? Because even though you did have male factor infertility, you still had a huge part in the IVF process.
The majority of the task is what the woman does.
So I guess in terms of timeframes from when you had that diagnosis, when could you move into IVF? Like how long do you think it took?
We moved relatively quickly. The only thing that held us back was a holiday we had booked. So
which you've got to take.
100%. So we went to Hawaii, and then we got back and we did our first retrieval I think I took the medication in the May, and we'd only started trying in the August the previous year.
That's a pretty good time frame. So did you want to just talk us through what the IVF process looked like for you, and then just ICSI in itself, what that process is like too?
Yeah. So IVF for us, as a woman who had relatively normal they were having issues with my ovulation, but I didn't have any issues with endometriosis or anything like that. So it was a pretty straightforward cycle. I just had medication to stimulate, so a follicle stimulating hormone to increase the number of eggs. And then I had the antagonist, so the other injection to stop you ovulating early. And then I took a trigger, and then I had my collection. So I did have quite a few scans. It took me a long time to get to the right. I think it was nearly 20-ish days of injections. Oh, wow. So it took quite a long time for my eggs to get big enough. And then we triggered, and then it was retrieval. And then after the retrieval, because we were doing ICSI, they took a sample. Luke gave his sample on the same day. Tough gig. Although I probably would prefer to be sedated. I don't mind the whole procedure. It's fine. Put me under. And then they used his sperm and they injected his sperm. So they picked out the goodies and they injected them into the eggs.
Are you okay with sharing how many eggs that were collected and then what your number was like at the end of that process?
Yeah, I am. It's a funny thing because when I was going through IVF, I really wanted to know people's numbers. And everyone's different. I was like, tell me. Yeah. I think I had 9 eggs collected, 6 were mature and 4 blasts. I was really happy with at the time. In hindsight, I mean, we'll go through that. I would have liked to have had a couple more because we did use them. But yeah, it was good. It was fine.
Yeah. So were you able to do a fresh transfer?
Yeah. Yep. So we did a fresh transfer maybe, I think exactly 5 days after the collection. Unfortunately, that transfer failed.
But did you feel like straight after the egg collection, 5 days later, your body was ready for a pregnancy or to have the transfer?
No, probably in hindsight, I think you're just so excited and you want to take
Yeah.
every opportunity you can. But in hindsight, if I was more patient, I probably wouldn't have had a transfer. I don't know if many people are ready. I know of some people that the collection cycle is what makes their transfer work and it's all to do with hormones. But I think I would have benefited from having a cycle off.
How did you go in the time between having that transfer and your 2-week wait and then the emotions that came with finding out that you weren't pregnant?
Completely insane. I'm the worst 2-week wait person. Buy a 7-pack of pregnancy tests and I do them all from day 3 within about 2 days. And then if it's not worked on day 3, then it's completely failed. It's over. There's no point. I'm going out for a glass of wine.
Yeah.
I just catastrophize the whole scenario. My family would agree that's just a thing that I do. But yeah, it was awful.
Did you go back to the specialist to decide to have a frozen embryo transfer? What did that look like? Could you have another one that following month?
Yeah, we really did not waste any time and I didn't want to. I was just like, off we go again. Once we were on that conveyor belt, I did not want to stop. Like, you're so in it that I was like, there's no point having a month off because I'm in it now. It's all I can think about every day. Let's just get to the baby. Yeah, it just feels like every day you just feel like you're wasting time, which is crazy because there's no time frame. But it does.
Yeah. I think everyone can relate to that. Like, time feels like it goes so quickly and so slowly at the same time when
100%.
you are in this and when everyone around you kind of, you feel like they're moving when you're standing still. Like,
Yeah. And they're not
it's
just moving, they're pregnant.
yeah, exactly. And
They're
that as
pregnant.
well.
Yeah.
And also, like, I can totally relate to wanting to do a fresh embryo transfer. And I think most people in this situation, unless you're told otherwise, would do it because you're so desperate for that baby.
Yep.
You just, you want to keep going.
Woman with no fertility issues, I thought that was our baby. I was like, I'm fine. So therefore we're getting our baby. Like, this is it. Like, they put the baby back in. We've bypassed the thing that we weren't able to do. So let's go have the baby now.
Having the transfer and then finding out that you weren't pregnant, did that feel scary? Because it's like, we've got the embryo, but I should be pregnant now. Obviously, it's not like that for everyone and it does take a few goes. But what were your feelings around that? Was that scary for you?
Yeah. In hindsight, I can say perhaps we didn't have our embryos PTGA tested.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, I could say that perhaps it just wasn't, the baby wasn't meant for this world. And it's awful it is to say. I would never say it was meant to be, but perhaps it just wasn't the right embryo. But at the time, I was like, we've done the thing we needed to do, so why aren't I pregnant? Like, why aren't we here? Yeah, it was terrifying. I was like, now what?
Gearing up for your frozen embryo transfer. So that was the following cycle. Did you need to take the medication in the lead up to that?
The goal was to do a natural cycle. But once again, with my like slow ovulation or lack of ovulation, after about 2 weeks, they ended up adding in a follicle stimulating injection because they wanted me to naturally ovulate, but I just wasn't getting there. So we added in a follicle stimulating hormone for about 3 or 4 days, and then I triggered. And that added follicle stimulating hormone also helped with increasing my lining, which is something that I had struggled with. And I'd always had really light periods. So I just don't know if that was something that was just a me thing. Like, I'd never had pain. I'd always had really light periods. So they were like, your lining's only getting to a 5. So with the increase of the follicle stimulating hormone, obviously the egg releases estrogen. Estrogen will thicken your lining. So that helped my lining get nice and fit for the transfer. And then I went to Bali.
Oh, amazing.
The day later on my own. I told Luke I needed a holiday and he was like, oh, please don't. I know you went so crazy last time through the 2-week wait. Do you really want to do this on your own? And I was like, if I'm going to do it, at least I'm going to do it on holiday. So I went to Bali. I took my 7-pack of first response pregnancy tests, which I quickly ran out of. And Bali pregnancy tests are not the same, I can tell you that. And I tested on day 3 and I had the faintest positive. We didn't know whether it was potentially left over from the trigger. But obviously that was probably 10-ish days before that. So I was like, oh, we'll see. You never know. Will it get darker the next day or will it get lighter?
Yeah. And then did you have your routine blood test with your fertility clinic?
Yeah. My mum picked me up from the airport or Gull bus. Mum picked me up anyway. And I wouldn't let her drive me to the airport for my bloods. I drove myself because she drives quite cautiously and slowly. I heard later that day that my TG was, I think, about 400. which was awesome. But I'd had symptoms in Bali. I'd had a couple of symptoms that made me feel really optimistic. I woke up one morning and Bali really stunk. And I know it always kind of stinks, but it really stunk. My sister had fallen pregnant in Nepal. And she said it was her first symptom too. And I was like, Bali stinks. It stinks today. It really stinks. And she was like, that's great.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
And once you had that confirmed pregnancy test, what did things look like? Did you feel like, because of obviously everything that you had been through, did you have any anxiety, or was it just, the joy of, yay, this is it, we're pregnant?
I had the kind of typical first trimester anxiety. Having not experienced a loss, I definitely can't speak for that. Having known a lot of women who did, it's always in the back of your mind. But I was trying to remain optimistic. It was like, I think someone said to me once, 1 in 4 pregnancies end in loss. So that means 75% don't. So statistically, you're more likely to be on that side than the other side. So why live in the fear? The statistics are on your side. So why live in the fear? Which,
Such a
when I've
great
not had a
mindset.
loss, it's a lot easier to think that.
So your first pregnancy was high risk, was it?
High
Or
risk. We had our 20-week scan. Everything had been really good up until then. And we had our 20-week scan and it's so awful. Everything was really good. Baby was really good. And then they look at blood flow to the placenta. And placenta was, I was, pretty keen to have a vaginal delivery, as I think a lot of women are these days, which is cool. And, placenta was posterior, so that's really exciting. And then she was having a look at the umbilical cord and where it connected. And she got kind of panicked and froze, and then was like, she'd already done an internal, but was like, can I do another internal ultrasound? And I was like, oh, okay. And my husband's boyfriend at the time remembers it was really quiet, and she was really panicked, and it was awful. Like, it was just so tense. And so she did an internal ultrasound, and she said, you've got a thing called vasa cord insertion. And I'm pretty sure you've also got a thing called vasa previa. And she drew me a quick picture on the whiteboard, and she said, the hospital will call you. But in the meantime, pelvic rest, nothing strenuous. You'll hear from the hospital as soon as you do. And as a public patient and working in the system, I know that could be a week, that could be 2 weeks. So obviously we left and we Googled it. And to explain it for everybody, if you've heard of something called marginal cord insertion, so where the umbilical cord attaches to maybe the edge of the placenta, that can be high risk. It can mean that baby's smaller. Vasa cord insertion means that the cord isn't attached to the placenta at all, which sounds impossible, but it's actually attached by fetal exposed vessels. So if you think the umbilical cord's covered in Wharton's jelly, so it's nice and rubbery and protected, these vessels that are on the inside of the membrane connecting the placenta and the umbilical cord, they have no protective Wharton's jelly. They're just exposed. And what made me extra high risk, or Clem's pregnancy extra high risk, was that those vessels were directly across my cervix. And so baby's head down on those vessels, and the bigger baby gets, the more likely that head is to pop those vessels. And if those vessels rupture, it's about 5 minutes before baby loses all its blood volume. So it becomes more and more high risk as the baby gets bigger. And if it's not managed, it's always fatal.
Yeah. Okay. And how long did it take you to hear from the hospital after the scan?
Pretty proactive. So I called the maternity assessment unit, and I just mentioned the word vasa previa, vasa cord insertion, and they put me onto a doctor on the phone. Yeah. So I was really lucky. And they said they would look at my scans. They do see them sometimes. They would look at my scans. They'll send me an email with the plan going forward. But the RANSOG, so the Royal Australian New Zealand kind of obstetrics guideline, is hospital admission at 32 weeks, just in case, and then a cesarean at 36 weeks. So the doctor I spoke to said, that's what we'll do. I'll double check your scans. I'll send you an email with more information. In the meantime, pelvic rest, but continue physical activity as normal. And you'll move into the hospital at 32 weeks pregnant.
So if they say pelvic rest but continue physical activity, what does that look like?
Pelvic rest is intercourse.
Okay, so just no intercourse, but you can just continue with every... Okay.
I was a bit nervous. I didn't run until about 20 weeks, but as a pretty active person, I still did Pilates. I didn't do anything high intensity. I think I was just scared of high intensity in general.
Yeah, for sure.
But I know, so I didn't run until about 25-ish weeks, but I still did Pilates and I swam. Actually, that's when I got into swimming. So it's good.
Yeah, amazing. And once you found that information out, what did that feel like and what was that time like for you guys?
Oh, it was awful. We'd already done our hypnobirthing course. So
Yeah.
I was pretty set on having a natural low intervention pregnancy, low intervention delivery. And then obviously we're scared that something's going to happen to the baby. And it just made the whole pregnancy so full of anxiety. It really did strip the joy away, which was so
Yeah.
sad. Like we
Mhm.
just lived in fear. And I was like, every time I went to the toilet, I'm like, there's going to be blood. Yeah, it probably got easier. This is terrible. But once we were past viability, because the doctors had said, if anything happens before 23 weeks, there's no point. There's, just live life as normal, do whatever. But after 23 weeks, their advice was don't travel too far from a tertiary hospital because then they could do something. So it was like this double-edged sword of, we wanted to go on a baby moon. We wanted to live our life. But it was like, no, we just want to stay by a hospital because if anything happens, we want this baby to, be born.
Yeah. And because you were high risk, did that mean that you had scans every couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was moved to the fetal medicine unit. So I saw obstetricians. I actually saw the head of obstetrics at Geelong Hospital ended up being my obstetrician. So I had a really nice continuity of care, which was good when you are in that high risk category. And I had regular scans, which was good because we saw baby and she was good. She was just very small, which is to do with developmentous cord insertion as well. Nutrients gets reabsorbed into those vessels before it can pass to the baby.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So then what did your birth look like?
I was admitted to hospital at the end of January, which was a bit devastating because I'm a real summer girl. So don't want me up. And
Yeah.
I negotiated some pretty liberal restrictions to my hospital stay. So I had a single room on the antenatal ward. Luke borrowed a fridge from work. So I had a fridge in my own room for my own food. I was allowed to travel freely within the grounds of the hospital, even the peripheral of the hospital, so outside, but not to leave the block. And I had to have a cannula in my hand in case something happened. And the advice was obviously to have my phone on me at all times in case something happened. And then I lived there for a week and a half and the orderly came to see me and said, they'd like to do another scan. I'm going to wheel you across the road. And so they did that and wheeled me across the road where the head of obstetrics was there. And she's like, you haven't had a scan since 30 weeks. And at this point I was 33 and a half. So she's, we'll have a look, we really should have confirmed that the vasa previa was still present before you'd been admitted.
Yeah.
Because like with placenta previa, it can grow away from the cervix. And I was like, oh, okay. So they scanned me and she said the vessels have moved. And I was like, okay, what does this mean? She said, you can go home.
Oh, wow.
I said, what? And so she's, call your partner and tell him. And I called him and he said, I want to talk to a doctor or a nurse. I don't believe you. You've lost your mind. Because I'd struggled for a few days before that. I was like, oh. And so, he spoke to the doctors and nurses and they said, no, you can come get her. And so we went home and it was all really exciting and we had a conversation. Obviously, that was something that we'd been gearing up for 12 weeks, so for 3 months. So it was just so bizarre to get our heads around it. Friends and family were like, what the hell is going on? But we had a conversation, the two of us. They booked us an appointment at the hospital at 38 weeks. And our preference, knowing that most first-time mums go late, our preference is going to be to have an elective Caesar between 38 and 40 weeks because we were nervous. It just felt like, how could this possibly have been completely resolved? Surely it can't just all be good now. And our baby was measuring, she was tiny. She was in she was less than 50th percentile. So I was like, would a vaginal delivery be too stressful for her? We didn't know it was her at the time. And so, our preference was to have an early Caesar. And then we decided in that time frame to get married. We'd already done our marriage license because we'd thought about eloping. So we spent 12 days getting organised and we eloped just with our immediate families. I was 36 weeks and 5 days pregnant. Yeah, it was the best day ever. And then we went to Lorne for a long weekend and we got home on the Monday and hadn't even unpacked our suitcase and in bed that night at 37 weeks exactly, my waters broke. I went and got checked on. Like, obviously, our first thing was like, is it blood? Like, we were so scared. And we went into hospital, went and got checked. And they were pretty convinced it was my membranes had ruptured because there was so much of it. They were happy for me to go home and see if I went into labour.
Because you'd gotten your head around having a cesarean, how did that feel in that moment that all of a sudden everything had shifted and you were
Terrifying.
going to...
I really hadn't prepared at that point for vaginal delivery. I'd kind of just gotten rid of all of those plans, like all of the hypnobirthing and the breathing and the TENS machine and the birth combs. It was very much not at the forefront of my mind at that point. So we were nervous and but also just excited that we knew we were going to meet our baby within kind of 48 hours. Regardless of how that would happen, I really assumed I would end up having an emergency cesarean.
Yeah. But in the end, what happened with your birth?
Went back into hospital for a induction. So didn't go into labour at all, nothing, and went back into hospital for an induction the following day. They couldn't do any of the cervical priming things because my waters had already broken, infection risk, but I wasn't dilated at all. So we started on the syntocinon for about 6 hours, no changes. I think I dilated to a centimetre and it was pretty unbearable at that point. So I asked for an epidural. Within an hour of having the epidural, I dilated to 10. It's almost like the epidural, I needed it to relax my pelvic floor. But my boosting button on the epidural had never worked. I'd only ever just had the initial loading dose. So I didn't, at that point, I was calling for the anaesthetist to give me more epidural, but they said you're dilated to a 10. So there's no more epidural. So that's it. So Clem was born at about 7 o'clock that night. So the induction had started that morning. So it was an instrumental delivery with ventouse, so the vacuum, and an episiotomy, which was unpleasant, but I have such a positive birth experience. I made all of those choices as they happened. So I didn't have any kind of hard feelings about anything. And also, I think when you've gone through what we went through, I was just like, we have a healthy baby, and she was healthy. She was 2.49 kilos, but she was healthy and she came home with us.
What did that feel like once you finally had her on your chest after everything that you guys had been through?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
so amazing.
And now she's big and bossy.
Yeah. And the boss of the house, I assume.
Yeah.
All right, we might move into baby number 2 now, so your little boy. And obviously, like, you've been through so much, and then at what point were you like, okay, we're ready to go again? And I guess as well, knowing everything you'd been through the first time around and knowing that it might not be a straightforward road, I guess how long did it take you to make that decision, and what were the emotions that came up with that?
I think it's almost like my brain never left the IVF world. Like, I would have honestly had jumped back in when Clem was 6 months old, because I knew that's what we had to do to have a baby. And I knew that a part of my brain would still be consumed by that for as long as we were having babies. Yeah. And I never it was like I was counting down till her first birthday for us to go again. Like, I was like, when she gets to 1, we will start again. And we still had, so Clem had taken 2 transfers. So we still had 2 embryos. And in my mind, we were going to have 2 babies, and we've got 2 embryos left. So we'll have a baby and everything will be great. And I knew that it could take longer, but, she took 2 transfers. Hopefully he would take 2 transfers and it would be okay. Yeah. We get there, and then I could never think about IVF again.
Yeah, which would be nice. And I guess it probably really, it takes the joy away from, okay, let's start trying for another baby, and like the excitement around that. It's just probably, I mean, I'm making an assumption here, but just stress immediately instead, exciting.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I will always be a little bit sad about, is that we never got that experience. I've never got to surprise Luke with a pregnancy test. We've never got to not even have like fun trying to have a baby at periods of time, which I think Luke is a bit devastated by as well.
Yeah. It's not fair.
Yeah. No, really. It's really not fair. So yeah, we really did just jump back into it. Like, we called the clinic. It was so clinical. You call the clinic and you go, we're going again.
And then were you aiming again for a natural cycle for your frozen embryo transfer?
Yeah. So I'd never got my cycle back after having Clem. I'd breastfed until she was 14 months. And we actually did our first transfer while I was still breastfeeding,
Okay. Yeah.
which was advised against, but I wasn't ready to wean.
Yep.
So we used estrogen tablets to induce my cycle, and I had a bleed that way. And then we were able to get me to a point using follicle stimulating hormone and then trigger of ovulation, and transferred in June the following year. So she was born March the previous year, transferred June, but that cycle failed.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And was there a reason that they do advise against breastfeeding? Is this to do with your hormones, like
Yeah.
breastfeeding? And
I believe it's to do with prolactin.
Okay.
If you've
Yeah.
got high prolactin, that generally prohibits ovulation. And then that can mean and also if you've got high prolactin, often you'll have low estrogen. And
Yeah,
so they
okay.
want all your hormones to be in like a relatively normal range. And my estrogen was pretty low. So really, once again, just making like silly, stubborn decisions because I didn't want to stop breastfeeding and I wanted to have another baby. To be honest, I felt a bit bitter and like that other people can.
Yeah,
Like
it's
other
fair
people
enough.
can have a baby
Yeah.
while they're still like I fell pregnant breastfeeding, and it's like,
Yeah.
why do I have to stop breastfeeding just because I want to have another baby just
Yeah.
because the doctors told me I had to?
Yeah,
So I kind
totally
of went
understandable.
against advice, but I just
Mhm.
felt like, yeah, well, it's frustrating that my whole experience was kind of
Yeah,
dictated by a doctor.
and then also don't take this away from me as well when I'm not ready
Totally.
for it
Oh,
to
and
stop.
I
Yeah.
loved breastfeeding and was
Yeah.
not ready to stop. And I
Yeah.
really mourned that.
Yeah, that's really hard. So I guess once that transfer had failed, were you wanting to go straight away that next month, or did you want to give it some more time?
We did. So I ended up weaning between those two transfers.
Yeah.
Clem was only really feeding once a day. She didn't seem to need it. And I was like, I think I'm doing this for me. So I weaned. I was back at work at that point and I was working night shifts anyway. So it's difficult to keep up breastfeeding. I'm not going to pump at work on a night shift. They suggested that I do a medicated cycle. So that's the only medicated cycle I ever did. So they suggested I do a medicated cycle. So that was with the patches and estrogen tablets and yeah. And that was because I still hadn't had a cycle. So they were like, perhaps you might have more success doing it this way.
Yeah. And then what did that cycle look once you had the
I
transfer?
I think I bled within 2 days of the
Oh,
transfer.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're telling me, I was like, can I get some paperwork to get these bloods done? I'm bleeding. And they were, no, give it a couple more days. And it's just so frustrating. You're like, I don't want to. It's not worked.
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah.
And so that was both of our remaining embryos.
Then that meant another egg collection for you guys.
It did.
Yeah. And what were the emotions around that once that transfer had failed and knowing what you had ahead of you?
Really, I don't mind, honestly. The medication I find the least frustrating part of the whole process. And injections, not an issue. It's just the hormones make me feel pretty awful, pretty crazy, pretty sad. And then the months were going past, people were getting pregnant. I felt like I was back at work, but I was just buying time. I was like, I just want to be off work again. I'm going to have another baby. It was just like living in limbo land. So really, I just wanted to get it done. It's also like the financial burden of it all. Like I was like, amazing. We don't need to do another collection. And then all of a sudden we do. And it's, the money that we wanted to invest in the new house. And it feels so unfair.
Moving into that egg collection, did they give you the same protocol? Was it exactly the same as the first time around with the medications?
I think it was quite similar. Based off my previous results, they increased the doses of everything a little bit because I'd tolerated everything quite well and I hadn't overstimulated. They increased the doses and I had a really successful collection.
Okay.
So I got 19 eggs, 13 mature and 8 blasts.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's such a good result. Yeah.
I know, but it would have been nice had we had those 8 blasts of this first transfer.
Yes.
We would not have had to do a second collection. Yeah, but that's okay. We were stoked. It gave us obviously lots of chances to have a second baby.
Did you decide to do a fresh transfer after egg collection?
Would have loved to. Estrogen was too high from the collection.
Forced break. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't overstimulated as such. Like I didn't have ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome or anything like that. But yeah, my estrogen was in the thousands. They were like, it's just never going to work. Which honestly, like we talked about before, I actually think it's in my best interest. And I nearly think that most people should do it that way.
Yeah, and I feel exactly the same because I had a forced break, and after my egg collection, I was like, I'm so happy that this decision got made for me because
Yes,
I was
you would have done a
stuffed.
fresh,
Yeah,
and you would have. You just do what
and
you
it
can.
wouldn't have
You just
worked.
keep going.
Yeah,
No, it probably wouldn't have. And it was
no.
probably a completely normal embryo, and it might have been something that, never got a life because of the decisions we made, which I know is a bit.
But it's such a tough decision to make when you're in that moment, and I
Yeah,
completely understand. I would have made that decision if I didn't,
yeah,
you know. Yeah.
100%.
Did you need to wait for a period and then you were able
Yeah.
to have the
Yeah, so I
transfer?
had a bleed at the
Yeah.
end of that. And you're only waiting 2 or 3 weeks, aren't you? Like, it's
Yeah.
really not a long wait. No, that's kind of the shortest wait you can have in IVF, I think. So I had a bleed, and then I started prepping for another transfer.
And then were things pretty straightforward going in for that
Yeah.
transfer?
I
Yeah.
think I had said, it's funny, I really advocated for myself. I'd done a lot of research. I was living in the forums. IVF TikTok was my world. And I had made the decision that Clem's successful transfer was mostly natural. I said, I want to go, I think they'd suggested I do another medicated. And I said, look, I want to go natural this time. We can add in a follicle stimulating hormone later if I need it, which we ended up doing. But I'd like to keep things as natural as possible. Like, there's no reason that I need to go medicated. I've just had this bleed. Things are looking good. We transferred in mid-September, and that is
Yeah.
Cliffy.
And I didn't ask you this question for your first pregnancy, but like the first few weeks of pregnancy, because your conception was via IVF, did pregnancy look any different? Was there any medications or anything that you had to take that you wouldn't normally have to take if you just conceived naturally?
So I've never had to inject progesterone, but it's suppositories, both pregnancies, all transfers, very used to it. Found the best panty liners. The Aldi ones are really good. And if you know, you know. I think I took them for both pregnancies till about 10 weeks. So just before the end of the first trimester. Yep. And it's a
Okay.
very exciting day when you stop. So the second time they had me on the 400 milligram per, and they're so expensive.
Yeah, it is
Really?
really expensive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So what did this second pregnancy look like for you? Was it straightforward? Did you have any complications?
Pregnancy was honestly heaven.
Oh, so
It,
good.
like the universe really delivered. I was fortunate enough to get into the midwife, the MGP. I sent a letter and I begged my way in based off how complicated and medicated my last pregnancy had been, and also the conceptions. And I was accepted into the MGP super early on, so in the first trimester, maybe only 6 or 7 weeks. And I'd
Okay.
always joked about having a home birth. And when I had my first appointment with the MGP, I asked, and Luke looked at me and was like, no, maybe. Can I put my name down? And then if things change, they can change. And the midwife was like, better to opt in and opt out later rather than opt in at the last minute. And I was like, look, to be honest, something's going to come up. Nothing is ever streamlined. Something will come up. I'll get risked out. I'll have gestational diabetes, or he'll be too big, or he'll be too small. Something will happen. And nothing happened. And it was completely ordinary. It was the most ordinary pregnancy. The only kind of curveball was that we sold our house and our settlement date was on my due date. So having a home birth, we didn't have a home. But we bought and ended up settling we moved the settlement forward. So we moved when I was 36-ish weeks pregnant into right now. And so we were all set for a home birth.
That's so exciting. And what did your home birth look like?
My
Or the
waters
setup for it?
on the morning that I was 38 weeks and 6 days pregnant. I'd taken a video the day before of my belly and I'd said, I'm feeling really good, going for a long walk, but baby's still really high. Don't see it happening anytime soon. And then the following morning, I was kind of uncomfortable rolling around in bed and I felt a pop. And it was a Saturday morning. I said to Luke, oh, I think my waters have just broken. And then ran to the bathroom and he came in to check and he was like, oh my God, what do we do? And I was like, we just go about it. Like my previous experiences, my waters broke, but I never went into labor. So in my head, I wasn't ever going to go into labor. I was like, I'll probably get induced in 2 days, but we'll meet this baby in 2 days, but I'll probably get induced. So we went to swimming lessons.
As you do as a mum.
And by the time I left swimming lessons, I was having contractions. It was like maybe 9:30. Swimming lessons are at 8:30. I was having contractions 3 minutes apart, lasting for about 40 seconds, holding onto the walls of the swimming pool. It's about 35 degrees in there.
You're amazing.
Normally I swim laps. I said to Luke, do you think I can still swim laps after swimming? He's like, absolutely not. So, yeah, we came home and I watched Secret Life of Mormon Wives until about 10, 11. And then the midwife came around and checked me. Clem was still here. And I said to her, "Are you going to leave?" And she was like, "No, you're having a baby." I said, "No, surely you're going to leave." And so she slowly invited her other midwives. I ended up with 2 other midwives. One was learning and then my student midwife. Clem got taken by my mother-in-law after her nap at about 2 o'clock. And then Cliffy was born just after 3 o'clock
In what room of your house?
in the room. So where I am right now, in a pool.
Oh, so beautiful. I see you had a pool set up.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then
So we'd organised to have the pool. We hadn't done a run through because we didn't think that it would happen so soon.
yeah.
We ran out of hot water. There was pots and pans on the stove, as you can imagine. If you think when people talk about dream birth, I think they asked if they could check me based on the noises I was making, but I was still so comfortable. I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "You're 7.5. Would you like to get in the pool?" And I was like, "Oh, fine, sure." So I got in the pool and then I think he was born like 30 minutes later.
Was that experience quite healing for you considering everything that you guys had been through?
1
Yeah.
million percent. Like,
Yeah.
restored my faith in everything. I just was like, this is what we deserve after everything that we've been through. The conception and Clem's pregnancy and yeah, Cliffy just came along and just healed us. Yeah, really. Kind of made everything right. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. And he's a little angel.
He does sound like a little angel. I can't
Yeah.
believe he's been awake this whole time. Before we finish our conversation, I just kind of wanted to touch on relationships and I guess some reflections from you throughout that time. And the first one is throughout your fertility journey, even the first time, second time, how did it impact your relationships? You've spoken a little bit about you and your partner's relationship, but also friendships, people around you, family. How were those relationships impacted?
Yeah, definitely. It was challenging. I had some bizarre comments, which I'm sure you're across. You can always adopt. Ridiculous.
Have no words.
That was probably the thing that really kind of hurt the most. And that was a friend that's childless. So I don't know if that's something that perhaps if you don't want children, you don't understand. Some friendships were absolutely made closer, like special mention to one of my best friends in the world who had been doing IVF for a few years before we even started. And she was like my IVF godmother. And we've remained that close. We only had one friend at our wedding and I invited her and she did an embryo transfer about 5 days before our wedding. And that was actually her baby who she's got.
Oh, that's so amazing.
Yeah, which is heaven. So there were certain friends that like it really did make the friendship closer and more special. There's colleagues that had been through similar things that it really built on that friendship. And there's even friends that they were just so wonderful and supportive and understanding, even though they didn't have experience with this.
Yep.
But I think all of that precedes motherhood, doesn't it? Because motherhood
Yes.
is really like polarizing and can really affect your friendship. Yeah.
For
And my
sure.
family's wonderful, like really supportive, looked after Clem when we had appointments and, offered up money if we needed it. And yeah, I'm very grateful that they were there and understood. Yeah, but it definitely, I don't want to be like, use the cliche, but it doesn't show you who your true friends are, but maybe it shows you who's there for you when like you're really down, when you're down and out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I guess, is there anything that you wish people understood more about male factor infertility, just in general or from a medical standpoint?
Perhaps that it's like really common. I think that's
Yeah.
come to light a lot more recently.
Yeah.
But it's really common that it's absolutely no reflection on your manliness or manhood. Like my husband can do anything, fix anything. Like he's the manliest man I know. And it's absolutely no reflection on the kind of person he is or, his masculinity. It's just unlucky. Just the same way that, fertility for a woman doesn't make you, like issues doesn't make you any less of a woman. I want people to know that there shouldn't be shame associated with it. Inevitably, there will be shame. That's just human nature. But I also encourage people to reach out. And I know that support psychologists and things are expensive. But like to reach out for the support that's available if you have it through like your fertility clinic or even your friends. Share these things with friends. I think you'll find that there's support in places that you don't even realize. And particularly for men, yeah, absolutely no shame.
Is there any specific questions that you think that someone who might be in the beginning of this journey, or they might have just got that diagnosis, should be asking their medical professionals?
I think the best thing you can do is just do your own research.
Yeah.
Obviously, the medical professionals are there to guide you, but a lot of fertility clinics now, I don't know what everyone's experiences would be, but I really, at times, I felt like a number. And that's no disrespect to the fertility clinic itself. Like, perhaps that's just the protocols that you go through. But I honestly think the best thing you can do is advocate for yourself. So do your research and about your own specific things you're struggling with. So if it is male factor infertility, then, do the research. Make sure that the men are always being tested, like so often.
Yes.
Do it early. There's no harm. There's a cost
Just do it.
associated. There's no harm in if you're trying for a baby and you've gone 2, 3, 4 months. The best thing you can do is go and get the man tested. It's so easy. It's so simple. Because if he's all good, you can move forward. But if he's not, then that's going to be a barrier and there's no point continuing onwards. Yeah, so it's just to arm yourself. Like, knowledge is definitely power. And the more research you can do and the more you can understand, we all end up our own specialists. I know that.
And then just in relation to IVF, are there any parts of it that you think deserve more honest conversation or just more conversation in general that you'd like to share?
It's really kind of up to the woman, but I know that I felt like shame and I felt like I was hiding, like doing injections at work and things like that. But given how common it is, it probably should be something like you feel quite comfortable being able to talk to your boss about. Things like just the same way that, like, I suppose a lot of industries have introduced like miscarriage leave and things like that, having to take time off fertility appointments. Like, it should just be something that we're allowed to have conversations about with management. Yeah. I just don't think there shouldn't be shame associated with it. For some reason, having a baby naturally is just like this beautiful, joyful thing. Having to use fertility treatment to have a baby, it feels, I'm hiding my needles in the back of the fridge. Yeah. And I understand that not everyone wants to share that, but it can lift the weight off your shoulders if you feel comfortable.
And it can be such a hard time that you feel like you're going through so much and no one else around you would have any idea that you've just put a needle in yourself and then you've come back out to work with a big smile on your face.
100%.
Like, it can be a really weird time.
And it's bizarre because if you share it, you might actually find that there's someone in the office that's going through it, or someone that you work with that's going through it. And I found that sharing it or finding like little IVF friends along the road was like one of the greatest blessings for me. Like, to text day to day, and they might only be friendships for a season, but like reaching out, like I was in a Geelong IVF Facebook page and I ended up having coffee with some of those girls. And one of them ended up being my student midwife at Cliffy's birth. So I don't know. I just think they're like, yeah, if you are comfortable to share, then if you can share, because it lifts the weight up on shoulders. Like, a problem shared is a problem halved.
Yeah. 1,000%. I always say it's the worst community to be in, but it's the most beautiful community all at the same time.
It's so supportive. And we're all experts. Like, if you need tips and tricks, or if you've run out of Ganarelics on a Sunday night, like, that's the gang that you need to, you need to have friends in this group. You move on and you have your mum friends and you've got your uni friends and you've got high school friends. And this could be something you exist in for 6 months, 12 months. Like, you need your IVF friends too.
You do. Yeah. You've already given so much amazing advice throughout this entire conversation, but do you have any last advice for anyone who might be starting their journey, might be in the absolute thick of IVF trenches or infertility?
So hard, because I would never say that you're going to get your baby. I wish that I could say that, but I just think that's really frustrating advice to receive, because no one can guarantee that. But no matter what happens, everything will be okay. Yeah. If you just keep going, chin up, you're doing amazing and you'll get through it, and life will be amazing, whatever that looks like, and you're going to be okay.
So beautiful, Hannah. Thank you so much for this conversation. Again, for being so vulnerable and open. I know this is just going to help so many people who are in the thick of it at the moment, or just, need some education around these things as well. So thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you. I hope it was a little bit educational, a little bit entertaining. I hope no one ever has to go through that exact journey